Now, the question gets asked every election year, and especially in off-year elections like this one. Are young people going to turn out to vote? Are they going to get engaged in the political process? Well, our next guest represents a group that is not just talking about that, but trying to do something about it. Blue Future is a group that is, well, I'm actually going to let her tell us what Blue Future is rather than trying to describe it myself. Angela Chen is a sophomore at American University. She's the president of American University College Democrats, and she's majoring in communications, legal institutions, economics, and government, what they call CLEG or CLEG. And she joins us now. So first of all, Angela, thanks for coming on the program.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so grateful for the opportunity to talk about the great work that Blue Future has done, and the ways they've helped my College Democrats chapter kind of flourish and grow this year. So Blue Future is part of the Youth Progressive Action Catalyst. So it's a PAC that works towards organizing and mobilizing young voters across the country to not only get out there and vote, but get all of your friends, get everyone else on your campus interested and mobilizing, and not only voting, but phone banking, going out there and knocking doors. Blue Future is an organization that's deeply rooted in the belief that young people have something not only to contribute to the political cycle and the political environment, but something unique and valuable that no one else can bring. So I'm so proud and I'm so excited to be a Youth Power Fund recipient this semester, and we're doing a lot of great work with the money that we've gotten.
So you raised a really interesting point, Angela, which is about young people having something to contribute that's unique and important. Because, you know, when I was in college, that was sort of, I wouldn't say it was understood, but I would say among Democrats, among progressives, it was kind of understood that there was a lot of energy among young people and that there were a lot of exciting things happening. I think that perception's coming back, but I think it's taking a little while. I think we were at a point for a while when, to be honest, I think some party folks kind of thought of young voters as an ATM where they could just go and get some votes and maybe wish they had more, rather than seeing it, what you describe as more like a collaboration. And is that right? Do you see it more as a collaboration?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the fact of the matter is young people, and specifically college students, because that's what I am, we have issues that are specific to ourselves that we're passionate about. In order to mobilize, in order to get us mobilized, we want our politicians, we want our elected officials to be listening. Like, for example, I know a lot of college students are really passionate about student debt and student loans and the future of what paying for college is going to look like. I think another example, I think after the 2016 election, I think frankly a lot of young people were discouraged, felt like the system wasn't listening to what we wanted. It wasn't prioritizing the issues that we were caring about. But I think that with recent mobility, especially with the 2018 midterms, a lot of candidates have been able to get out there and give a message that really speaks to young people. Like, something that I know really mobilizes AU Dems and AU students in general right now is the issue is Brett Kavanaugh, for example, right? So we're very passionate about sexual assault, we're very passionate about women's rights on campus. And it's this idea of, if you don't like what your elected officials are saying, then you can vote them out. We're old enough now that we get the chance to participate in our democratic system. And if you don't like the way that someone is doing something or the way that someone is representing you, you can fire them. So it's something new. I think it's hard to get students who have never voted before to register and vote when it seems like things are so bleak, when it seems like there's such a big disconnect. But I think that organizations like Blue Future that specifically target young people, like if young people were all to register to vote, we would be the biggest voting PAC, like millennials, we would be. So I think it's something that's just so important in terms of messaging and in terms of convincing young people that there is an impact to be made.
You know, it's interesting that you mentioned a couple things that we're covering on this week's show. One is student debt. We're doing a segment on, we have a segment in this week's show on student debt cancellation and the politics of that, the economics of that. You mentioned the sort of sense that, you know, sometimes people feel things are so bleak, and we're talking in this week's show with the Hip Hop Caucus about, you know, among other things, about overcoming that sense of bleakness and so on. So I really get what you guys are doing. I think. I mean, and I certainly support it. You know, Angela, one of the things that I see in the polling, because I'm just a polling nerd, I guess, and I read polls a lot, including the breakout, you know, the details, the 40-page and all that. What I see a fair amount in the polling is that younger people, besides the obvious fact that they're the future, right? Eventually older generations are going to pass on, that younger people have views that I think would lead to a better future, that younger people tend to be more progressive, more enlightened about the economy, more enlightened about race and gender relations, women's rights, Black Lives Matter, you name it, on all the issues that certainly that I feel strong about. On most of them, I think if I could just hand it over to a referendum of young people, I'd be thrilled with the world I'm living in. Does that sort of fit with your impression?
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think that looking forward to the future, like the idea is that we need to feel like we can make an impact that we want to see. And obviously we want us to shape our future for the better. Like we want our kids to be able to, for example, with climate change, like we want our kids to be able to have the same opportunities that we did, to have the same natural sites and the same natural resources that we did, which is why climate change is so important. And I think it's frustrating for a lot of kids to see their representatives and their elected officials being, 70 plus, like especially for young women of color, their elected representatives being 70 plus, like white men. It's frustrating to feel like your voice doesn't matter, and especially leading up to your voting age, right? So a lot of college freshmen, they're 18. Leading up to then, they haven't necessarily been able to make any tangible impact on policies that they want to see enacted or any advocacy that they want to do. And so the mission of Blue Future is kind of to organize these progressive ideals. So like LGBTQ plus rights, women's rights, criminal justice reform, these progressive ideals that you mentioned, and kind of get a group of young people together that can move forward with that and bring that forward in a way that we haven't seen young people necessarily do before.
So you mentioned that Blue Future and your role in it, but I'm curious, do you know, I don't know when you got involved in it, but how did the group come into existence? Do you know?
Mm-hmm. So Blue Future is actually run by an AU alum, Nick Guthman, who was the previous president of AU College Democrats. So he and a bunch of other primarily AU College Dems alum, came together to form this out of like the idea that we can make an impact with youth mobilization. Like it's not a lost cause. Like there's so much untapped potential, basically, was the formation behind it. And then we can use our funding, we can use our power, we can use the voice that we have now as a way to mobilize younger voters. Especially, I know there's a lot of high school Youth Power Fund recipients that are getting teens pre-registered to vote when they're 16, 14, 15. Like Blue Future is the idea that if we set ourselves up now correctly for when these kids turn 18 or when these kids are ready to get politically engaged, like they'll be ready.
So if you had, how do I put it, a wish list for, a political slate of politicians, it would include younger people, based on what you've said so far. It would include, more diverse group of people. What else? What would your ideal Democratic slate look like?
I think that my personal ideal Democratic slate would look something like something that I'm very passionate about is getting more women elected. So I think it'd be diverse not only in race, but also in socioeconomic status and gender. I think diversity is very much a buzzword nowadays, and there's a lot of facets and aspects to it that we don't necessarily think about. The way that we live and the way that we've grown up definitely shape our worldviews, and I'm very conscious of that. Like, I'm very lucky to be going to AU. Like, a very small percentage of the country like graduates with a college degree or even gets the opportunity to go to college. So as a Youth Power Fund fellow and Blue Future, like, you recognize that, we're fighting for other people that don't necessarily have this platform to have their voices be heard. So I think that my ideal Democratic slate would be like female. I think it'd be female. I think it'd be socioeconomically diverse. I think it'd be geographically diverse as well. Especially being from California, Nick, the Nick Gutman is also from California. We grew up around a lot of progressive ideals. We grew up around people that were, for the most part, very progressive. So coming to AU and seeing a lot of varying kind of ideals is difficult. So I think it'd be geographically diverse, diverse in gender, diverse in socioeconomic status, diverse in race. Diversity is so important. As much as it is a buzzword, representation is important, and it's important to have people fighting for you that you feel like represents your needs.
Oh yeah, I completely agree. Now, but I can't help guessing now because I lived in California for a long time. So you're saying you grew up around progressive ideas. It has to be either the Bay Area or Santa Monica. So.
Yeah. Grew up in the Bay Area, San Francisco, born, yeah.
All right, okay, figured. Okay, well, what should people know about Blue Future before I let you go? What is it, who should be involved in it? Who should be checking it out? And where can they go to find it?
So I think the groups of people that should be checking it out is anyone who believes that like the youth in general is an underutilized political source. Like you mentioned that a lot of people, or in the past, the youth has been seen as kind of like an ATM to like get votes out. But I think that young people are more than just votes. Like voting is very, very important, right, and a very important way to voice your opinions. But I also think that young people have a lot to contribute policy-wise. They have a lot of organizing mobility. Like for example, AU Dems, we do phone banks. We do phone banks on like Monday, Tuesday, like Wednesday, like school nights, during midterm season, and we can get 60 people out calling on the lines, on the phones, making 2,000 calls. So I think for anyone who thinks that the youth demographic is untapped potential and they would like to participate in shaping the future of the Democratic Party, shaping the future of a group of people who have progressive ideals, I think that's the target demographic for Blue Future. And you can find bluefuture.com, bluefuture.org, I want to say.
US.
.us. There we go. You know better than I do, honestly. Not as hip to the internet as some of my peers, but
you kids today not knowing.
Honestly, yes, yeah. But I think anyone who thinks that the youth is underutilized. So.
Okay, well that's great. I also think the youth are underutilized in another way. It was Bobby Kennedy used to say that quote about some people see the world as it is and say why, and I like to see the world as it could be and say why not. I think that young people are especially good at that because they haven't been like brainwashed into thinking the way things are today is the way it has to be. And I love that about young people in politics too. So Angela Chen of American University College Democrats and bluefuture.us. Thanks for being an activist and thanks for coming on the program.
Thank you so much for having me. It was such an enjoyable conversation.
Same here.